Hello, all you happy people. It is Sunday, July 12th, 2026. So, we're going to talk a little bit about desire, need, and the human condition. So, here's what we're going to talk about. In Hellboy 2, the Ron Perlman issue version, The Golden Army, Hellboy's dad reads from an ancient manuscript, and it describes man was built or was made with a hole in his heart that could not be filled. And given society and things of that nature, that would appear to be completely true. Everybody wants to keep their stuff. They never want to lose their stuff. You even have homeless people. They'll accumulate a little bit, and then they'll get them a grocery cart, and they'll start accumulating more and more and more and more and more. Then they got like 2 grocery carts, and then they have to find them a place to kind of set up shop. They'll find them a tarp on the side of the road, or they'll go to a homeless shelter, and then they'll get them a tent or something. And they'll set up roots and stuff like that down, and that will be their base of where they keep their stuff, and so forth and so forth. And you've got basic everybody, people gather so much stuff that they have to put in, get a storage facilities and things like that. Hell, I'll tell you this, guys. I used to live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, small little Victorian house. We lived there for a little over 20 years, raised our daughter in there. And that little house, when we moved, we filled up 2 30-foot U-Hauls, the big ones, just to move us into this new house. And I'll tell you this, we dumbed it. I mean, we threw away lots of stuff, but still we ended up with stuff in the house and stuff like that. But we still almost completely filled up a 40-foot shipping container in the back of the property. So I am just as guilty of stuff as the next person. But there have been, I want to call them Tarzan researching. They've looked into, small, isolated, primitive, villages. And for the most part, they operate on a commune system where, everybody gathers for everybody so they can get through the winter or wet season or whatever, whatever nature throws at them. They're able to survive it. And, nothing more. They don't, some might accumulate a little bit of wealth for trade and stuff like that. But it's that old adage of you didn't know you needed it until you knew you needed it. The Bible records that, Adam and Eve in the garden were completely content with their life. They were in paradise. They were on a face-to-face, relationship with their Creator for a long time. I mean, you gotta, understand that the Bible's time, especially during times of in the garden and stuff like that, that timeline is God's time. So it's believed that, Adam lived that, probably about 100 years before God finally decided, hey, I need to give you a helpmate, and, brought about Eve. And then they probably lived another 100 years together in paradise before the fall. But, and you really, you can't blame it all on Eve, because, Adam was not somewhere else in the garden, fixing his car or, or replumbing a leaky faucet at the homestead in the garden. He was where Eve was, Adam was. It was life. There was, nothing, there was nothing drawing them apart. When, Eve is blamed for the fall, she succumbed to temptation. Adam was there. Adam was standing right next to her when that all happened. And even though she took the first bite, Adam was there and he didn't question. He fell too and took his bite as well of the fruit. So, Adam and Eve were quite content until the serpent said, well, wouldn't you like to have a little more? Wouldn't you like to be more like God? I mean, hell, to this point, all they knew was the garden and God. They were 100 million% innocent to anything other than God's greatness and his wisdom and everything, and his activity in their creation, as well as the comings and goings of the garden. They didn't, know that they could be anything else. They just knew that, hey, don't go eat over here. You can eat of every tree in the garden. Just don't eat of these two trees. Don't eat of this tree. And and they were quite content with that. They had the fruit of thousands of trees. Why do they got to bother with that tree? They didn't want to die. So, and they were told if they ate of the fruit, they would die. So there you go. Now, and here's the deal. They didn't know death. They didn't know death at all. There had never been death. Even with the war in heaven that predated Adam and Eve, or during the time of Adam and Eve, there was no death there. The war was happened, but nobody died in it. They were cast into prisons and things of that nature. Death didn't become a thing until Cain and Abel. So they just knew that it was bad. And not that they even really knew what was bad. He just knew, don't do it. When you're a kid, mom and dad tells you, hey, don't touch that pot of boiling water on the stove. It'll hurt you. Well, until you know what hurt means, you don't know what it is. And for the most part, you'll probably be content with that. And then suddenly, one day you decide to reach over and grab that pot while it's boiling on the stove. And then all of a sudden, you are a changed person. You know what that hurt means. The Bible teaches, do not want for anything, guys. The birds in the sky do not want for anything. They don't want for food. They don't want for shelter. They go everywhere and they find food and they find shelter when they need it. In many ways, shape, or forms, the faith of the birds and animals in this world is probably more closely to what God wants of us than we could ever be. Yes, animals that creep on the ground have to dig their own burrows and things of that nature. And birds will nest in order to keep their eggs safe. But they don't want for anything. They run around, they go, oh, hey, there's a nice piece of stick, but I'll make it to part of my nest. Guy just mowed his grass. I got a whole big pile of, grass there I could use to make my nest. Things like that, guys. I'll tell y'all a quick story. So, about a month before the end of school, I had the whole big plan. I was going to get out of school, and I'm talking about recent. I'm not talking about 30 years ago when I got out of high school or anything else like that. I'm talking about when school let out. I had two companies. I had Robert with Pool Maintenance Pros, and I had Richard with Epic Pools, both wanting me to come on to clean pools for them. And I was very specific. Okay, I don't want a full route. I want a part-time route, a couple of pools a day, nothing heavy. I am retired from pools. I don't want to work my ass off. And when it gets hot, I want to go home. You know? Everybody said, boom, let's do it. We can work with that. This is great. We can do this. And I mean, these two companies had actually reached out to me. So they reached out to me. I set my limits. And they were, they all said, hey, we can do that. Well, school lets out. And, I've still got my company that I do my filter cleans. And all of a sudden, crickets, guys. Crickets. Both Richard and Robert are telling me, no, I've got plenty of people now. I'm actually, I'm overstaffed. And I mean, they had called me saying, oh man, I'm like up to my eyeballs in work just a month ago. And now they're overstaffed. So I'm like, well, fuck, there goes my, extra money. Fortunately, my regular company is still sending me work, and I'm not working my ass off, but it's giving me nice fishing money and stuff like that, which is kind of what I was wanting. And because those other two companies hadn't chimed in, I also had plenty of time to go and help my wife and daughter, moving my daughter from Arkansas to Oklahoma, then from Chickasha, Oklahoma to OKC. And, I got to be a part of that. And wouldn't you know it, while I'm sitting in the back of a U-Haul, finishing up, the part of the move, I would get a phone call from another company, a completely different company, that was referred to, by the company that I'm currently doing, my side hustle with. And he's up to his eyeball in filter cleans, which is, kind of the cherry on top. I really enjoy doing filter cleans because I have zero responsibility. That pool's condition is not on me. All I'm responsible for is I go back there, I take a dirty picture, I take a clean picture once the filters are done. Make sure nothing's leaking when I'm done, and I go on to my next one. And that's it. As long as the filter's not leaking when I'm done with it, and everything was put together properly, I'm in like Flynn. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And so I started my first week of that, but I had, during all this, downtime, I've been completely, I'd come to grips that I was going to go with my wife to her summer conference in Austin, and I was going to chillax. I was going to sit in the pool for 4 days and chase the shade in the swimming pool and float. Because, guys, I ain't gonna lie to you, being a pool man and now going on almost 2 years without actually being in the water, it's hard shit. But, que sera, sera, sera. So now I've got this new company and they got plenty of work. And my regular guy is still sending me work. So now I got 2 baskets to actually draw from. And I've been told by the new guy that he's referring me to another company. So I might actually have 3 baskets now to draw from whenever, things get rough. And I ain't gonna lie, guys, I only got like 2, maybe 3 weeks before I start back to school. So then I'll be down to, I can't do 3 pools a day. It'll be 2 a day, and that's it. Which, 2 a day, $100 a day, 5 days a week, that's $500. That's some charity money right there. You know, that's $2K, almost an extra $2K a month, if not a little more. So I'm like, you know, God knows what he's doing. I ain't got to stress about it. I ain't got to think about it. Let him do it, you know. And as far as stuff goes, guys, ain't you got enough stuff? I know I do. And while my wife is in that summer conference this week, I'm going to get in that 40-foot shipping container, and I'm going to throw some shit away. I'm going to fill my dumpster up, and then Tuesday, whenever they empty it, I'm going to go back out there and I'm going to fill it up again. Because I've got way too much shit. And you know what? All I need, I don't need my stuff. I don't need my things. I need my family. I need my God. And that's it, guys. Let's roll.